Okay, America, listen up, because this isn't a drill, it's a five-alarm fire heading straight for your living room. There's a piece of legislation snaking its way through Congress called the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, or H.R. 1. The name itself is a masterclass in Orwellian doublespeak, a cynical attempt to lipstick a pig of truly monumental proportions. This bill isn't beautiful. It's a grotesque blueprint for an American hellscape, meticulously designed to cause widespread suffering and, yes, death. We're talking about a future so bleak it makes dystopian novels look like cheerful bedtime stories. Forget your usual political grievances for a moment, because this transcends left versus right. This is about the very survival of a decent functioning society. The abyss is not just staring back, it's sending you an eviction notice thanks to H.R. 1. So, what exactly is this legislative horror show, this 1,116-page behemoth of bad ideas? Its sponsors, with a straight face that deserves some kind of award for audacity, are peddling it as a once-in-a-generation tax cut and anti-woke overhaul. Oh, fantastic! Just what the country needs: more tax breaks for billionaires and a crusade against wokeness, whatever vaguely defined boogeyman that refers to this week, while everyday Americans face genuine crises. But peel back that deceptive wrapping and you'll find what opponents, the people who actually read the damn thing and care about consequences, are desperately warning us about. This bill is a Trojan horse, packed to the brim with provisions that will systematically dismantle healthcare, nutrition programs, environmental safeguards, and basic human decency. This is not hyperbole, it's the horrifying reality. The sheer, unadulterated audacity of H.R. 1 is breathtaking in its destructive scope. Imagine a legislative wrecking ball swinging wildly through every aspect of American life. Vital healthcare programs like Medicaid and the ACA, targeted for demolition, essential food assistance like SNAP, on the chopping block, the environmental protections that keep our air breathable and water drinkable, erased, as if they were an inconvenient smudge. But wait, there's more. This bill also takes aim at diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, launches a direct assault on LGBTQ+ communities, and tramples states' rights with the subtlety of a rampaging rhino. And for an extra spicy kick of societal chaos, it could very well make it easier for dangerous individuals to obtain firearms. All this, while nonchalantly adding trillions to the national debt. It's a comprehensive manual for how to ruin a country, and they're trying to pass it off as progress. Now I need you to understand the screaming urgency of this moment. This isn't some abstract, far-off threat that we can leisurely ponder over a cup of tea. The Senate, bless their deliberative hearts, is expected to begin markups on this legislative monstrosity the week of June 3, 2025. That is practically tomorrow, in governmental terms. We are out of time for polite disagreement or hoping someone else will fix it. We need a massive, sustained, and deafening wave of public outrage. This bill, H.R. 1, is not just another piece of bad policy. It's an existential threat designed to fundamentally break the United States. This is your final, flashing red warning. The alarm isn't just ringing, it's screaming its lungs out, and you need to answer the call before it's too late. Seriously, stop what you're doing and pay attention. Let's talk about the bedrock of American democracy, the separation of powers. Or, as H.R. 1 sees it, a quaint, outdated suggestion, perhaps useful as a doily. Consider the bill's court-limiting clause. It sounds like dry legal jargon designed to make your eyes glaze over, but its effect is terrifyingly simple. It could make it impossible for federal courts to enforce contempt orders against federal officials unless private plaintiffs first post a hefty cash bond. Think about that for a second. A government official defies a court order, blatantly breaks the law, and the judiciary is effectively neutered, unable to hold them accountable without a significant financial barrier being erected first. Legal scholars are practically setting their hair on fire over this, warning that it handcuffs the judiciary, flagrantly violates the separation of powers, and could nullify hundreds of prior rulings against the executive branch. It's an open invitation for tyranny, gift-wrapped with a congressional bow. And the hits keep coming for any semblance of governmental balance, like a piñata at a party hosted by chaos itself. This bill champions a stunning 10-year federal preemption of all state and local AI regulation, specifically targeting any rules that could affect election integrity, privacy, or content moderation. So if your state, in its wisdom, wants to pass laws to combat those terrifyingly realistic deepfake political ads flooding your social media feeds, or perhaps protect your personal voter data from being exploited by shadowy entities, tough luck, states. The federal government, under H.R. 1, plants its big boot down and says no. Digital rights groups have rightly branded this a blanket federal gag order, a breathtaking power grab that centralizes control in Washington. It's a shocking display of hypocrisy from lawmakers who often preach the gospel of states' rights, now conveniently forgotten when it suits their authoritarian agenda. But the overreach doesn't stop there. Oh no, that would be too subtle for this legislative sledgehammer. H.R. 1 proposes a national mass deportation architecture, backed by a staggering $150 billion appropriation. This fortune, your tax dollars by the way, is earmarked for new detention facilities, more sections of that vanity border wall, the hiring of 10,000 new ICE agents, and a significant expansion of mandatory, fast-track removal processes that make due process a distant memory. Immigration and human rights lawyers are sounding the loudest alarms, warning of a catastrophic erosion of fundamental rights and the very real potential for family separations on a scale unseen in modern American history. This isn't about sensible immigration reform or border security, it's about orchestrating a humanitarian crisis designed to inflict maximum cruelty and fear upon vulnerable people. It's a policy devoid of compassion, common sense, and basic human decency. Finally, in a move that seems almost designed to cripple future generations and ensure widespread ignorance, the bill mandates the complete sunset of the U.S. Department of Education within 5 years. Yes, you read that correctly. Eliminated, kaput, gone. During this wind-down period, the Secretary of Education would be blocked from issuing most new regulations, essentially freezing any progress or adaptation in its tracks. Teachers' unions, disability rights advocates, and countless parents are understandably horrified, and frankly they should be. This provision effectively strips away crucial federal civil rights backstops that protect students, particularly those with disabilities or from disadvantaged backgrounds who rely on federal oversight for a fair chance. Imagine an educational landscape with no national standards, no federal mechanism to ensure equity, and no recourse when students' fundamental rights are violated. That's the bleak educational dystopia H.R. 1 aims to create, undermining the very foundation of opportunity in America. If you value your health, or the health of anyone you know, or even the abstract concept of a society that doesn't let its sick citizens die in the gutter, then H.R. 1 is coming for you with a rusty scalpel. This bill launches a full frontal assault on Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act, programs that, for all their imperfections, provide a critical lifeline for millions of Americans. It callously imposes mandatory work requirements for Medicaid recipients aged 19 to 64, regardless of local job availability, personal health conditions, or crucial caregiving responsibilities for children or elderly relatives. It institutes burdensome quarterly eligibility rechecks, a bureaucratic nightmare seemingly designed with the primary purpose of tripping people up and kicking them off their essential coverage. Furthermore, it slashes federal matching funds for states and caps the home equity disregard, making it demonstrably harder for vulnerable seniors and people with disabilities to qualify for care. The nonpartisan Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, people who actually count these things instead of just pulling numbers out of thin air, soberly estimates that up to 10 million people could lose their health coverage. 10 million. Let that number sink in. That's more than the entire population of New York City. Hospitals, already struggling under immense pressure, are bracing for an unmanageable surge in uncompensated care, which will inevitably lead to closures, especially in rural areas, and higher costs for everyone else. This isn't healthcare reform by any stretch of the imagination, it's healthcare destruction, a deliberate policy choice to inflict needless suffering and death on a massive scale. But why stop at denying healthcare when you can also take food out of people's mouths? That seems to be the cruel underlying logic behind H.R. 1's provisions targeting the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP. The bill raises work requirement ages for SNAP, making it harder for older, struggling individuals to access basic food aid. It tightens waivers for able-bodied adults without dependents, ABODs, even in areas with chronically scarce job opportunities, essentially telling people to find jobs that don't exist or starve. It even pettily narrows internet expense deductions, a tiny allowance that can make the difference for low-income families trying to make ends meet and stay connected in the modern world. Anti-hunger NGOs, the frontline organizations witnessing this desperation daily, project that these callous changes would result in roughly 1.7 million people seeing their already meager food benefits drastically reduced or terminated altogether. We are seriously talking about condemning more children, seniors, veterans, and struggling families to the gnawing pain of hunger in one of the wealthiest nations on the entire planet. It's morally bankrupt and economically stupid. Dreaming of a better future through education? Well, HR 1 has some bad news for your aspirations too, because apparently, an educated populace is a dangerous thing. The bill severely squeezes student aid, capping lifetime federal loan borrowing at a mere $150,000. This is a devastating blow for aspiring doctors, lawyers, scientists, engineers, and anyone pursuing graduate or professional degrees, where educational costs routinely and significantly exceed this arbitrary and punitive limit. To add insult to considerable injury, it suspends the Public Service Loan Forgiveness (PSLF) program, actively discouraging talented individuals from entering vital but often lower-paying public service careers like teaching, nursing, or social work. And in a move that will surprise absolutely no one familiar with how Washington often works, the bill includes a large regulatory relief section for-profit colleges, institutions frequently criticized for predatory practices and poor student outcomes. Medical and graduate students are already warning that this cap will force them into the clutches of high-interest private loan sharks, burying them under mountains of debt for decades. Section 4. Dividing and endangering, the assault on equality and safety. This bill is not content with just wrecking our economy and health. It also wages a vindictive war on fairness, equality, and basic human dignity. Diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, which aim to create more just, representative, and productive institutions by acknowledging and addressing historical and systemic inequalities, are squarely in HR 1's ideological crosshairs. The bill includes a sweeping, vaguely worded federal-wide funding ban for any program training or office premised on race, sex, gender identity, or other identity factors. Critics, and they are legion and growing by the day, point out that this poorly defined prohibition is a Trojan horse, meticulously designed to effectively dismantle DEI offices and programs across all federal agencies and any university or organization receiving federal funds. Efforts to address systemic discrimination, to foster mutual understanding, and to build more inclusive workplaces and learning environments where everyone has a fair shot. They're not just defunded, they're demonized and effectively outlawed by this deeply regressive and divisive legislation. The cruelty embedded in HR 1 reaches a particularly vicious pitch in its provisions targeting the LGBTQ+ community, especially transgender youth, who are already among the most vulnerable members of our society. The bill explicitly bars Medicaid, the Children's Health Insurance Program, or any federally funded health plan from covering gender-affirming care for minors. This is medically necessary care, endorsed by every major medical association in the country. A separate, equally punitive rider blocks Health and Human Services grants to any clinic that provides such care, even if they use other funding sources for it, effectively trying to shut down these essential services. Esteemed medical associations, representing the overwhelming consensus of healthcare professionals, have issued stark warnings that these measures override established evidence-based standards of care. They emphasize that denying access to this care will endanger the lives and well-being of already vulnerable transgender young people, fueling a mental health crisis and leading to preventable deaths. This is government-sanctioned persecution, not protection. The bill's animosity extends to immigrants as well, with a particularly mean-spirited provision axing the Diversity Immigrant Visa Program, colloquially known as the Green Card Lottery. This move would eliminate 55,000 visas annually, visas that, as immigration advocates and demographic data clearly show, disproportionately benefit individuals from African and South Asian nations. This isn't a random budget cut or a sensible policy adjustment, it's a targeted restriction aimed at shaping the demographic makeup of new Americans. Critics argue it's a thinly veiled, race-weighted policy smuggled into a massive bill under the guise of fiscal responsibility or national security concerns. It's another brick in a wall designed to make America less diverse, less welcoming, and more insular, betraying the nation's long-professed ideals as a beacon of hope and opportunity for people from all corners of the globe. It's a stain on our national character. Beyond these targeted attacks on specific communities, H.R. 1 contains measures that seem almost purpose-built to escalate violence and societal danger, making everyone less safe. For instance, it deregulates firearms suppressors, often misleadingly called silencers, by removing them from the stringent controls of the National Firearms Act. This means scrapping the $200 tax stamp, the extensive background check, and the lengthy federal wait time currently required to obtain one. Gun violence prevention groups are, quite rightly, sounding the alarm at the top of their lungs, arguing this will make it significantly easier for criminals and mass shooters to commit shootings undetected, increasing the lethality of attacks and making it harder for law enforcement to respond. Furthermore, the bill authorizes a military surge on the U.S. border, deploying up to 15,000 active-duty troops with expanded rules of engagement and, chillingly, indemnity from civil suits for their actions. Critics fear this will inevitably lead to an escalation of lethal force incidents, human rights abuses, and the further unnecessary militarization of our border communities. Section 5, Economic Ruin and Your Last Stand, Why We Must Act Now. Now let's talk about the bill for this self-inflicted catastrophe, because H.R. 1 isn't just morally bankrupt, it's fiscally insane, like giving a pyromaniac a book of matches and a gallon of gasoline and calling it economic policy. Even after inflicting all those deep, painful cuts to essential social programs that millions of hardworking Americans rely on for survival, this legislative monstrosity is projected to add a jaw-dropping $4 to $5 trillion to the national debt over the next decade. Yes, you heard that right, trillion with a T. That's not chump change you find under the sofa cushions. It's a mountain of debt we'll be irresponsibly passing on to our children and grandchildren, saddling them with our profligacy. Credit rating agency Moody's is already flashing bright red warning lights, having placed U.S. sovereign debt on a negative watch, partly due to grave concerns over exactly this kind of reckless, unfunded fiscal policy. We are gutting our society to finance, what exactly? An economic black hole of epic proportions. So, where is all this borrowed money going if not to help ordinary people, fix our crumbling infrastructure, or invest in the future? Surprise, surprise, it's largely flowing towards extending and generously expanding the 2017 corporate tax cuts, which overwhelmingly benefited large, profitable corporations and the wealthiest individuals, who frankly were doing just fine. At the very same time, H.R. 1 actively pares back crucial clean energy tax credits that are vital for transitioning to a sustainable economy and combating climate change. Market analysts and serious economists are predicting a sharp slowdown in the build-out of electric vehicle infrastructure and renewable energy projects as a direct result of these short-sighted cuts. This means, not only will we fall further behind in addressing the escalating climate crisis, but we'll also be threatening tens of thousands of good-paying American manufacturing jobs in these burgeoning and critically important green sectors. It's a classic, cynical case of robbing Main Street to lavish more unneeded riches on Wall Street, all while setting our environmental progress back by decades. This is it. This is your absolute final flashing neon sign with sirens blaring and a giant ape waving its arms warning. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act, H.R. 1, is not just another piece of partisan legislation to grumble about over your morning coffee. It is a clear and present danger, a legislative wrecking ball meticulously aimed at the very foundations of American society: our health, our environment, our rights, our safety, and our economic future. Its proponents may try to sell you a fantasy of tax cuts, trickle-down economics, and anti-woke victories that somehow make your life better, but the reality they are offering is a nightmare of widespread suffering, irreversible environmental damage, and a society fractured by grotesque inequality and deliberately stoked division. This isn't just bad policy, it's a betrayal of everything America should and could stand for. We are on the precipice of a self-inflicted hellscape, and the time for complacency, if there ever was one, is long, long past. So what in God's name can you, one person, possibly do against such a colossal, multi-headed legislative threat? You can become the sand in the gears. You can be the persistent, unignorable voice that refuses to be silenced. You must contact your representatives, your senators, your House member. Call them until their ears ring. Email them until their inboxes explode. Flood their social media with polite but firm demands. Show up at their town halls and their local offices. Look them in the eye and tell them what you think. Do it today, do it tomorrow, do it relentlessly, every single day, until they cannot possibly ignore the deafening roar of opposition to this catastrophic bill. It doesn't matter what party they belong to, they work for you, and they need to understand the profound depth of public anger and legitimate fear this bill generates. Some Republican senators have already expressed serious discomfort with certain provisions. Your sustained pressure can embolden them, can change minds, can stop this legislative train wreck before it derails America. Your future, your family's future, and America's future literally depend on it. Act now. Don't wait for someone else to do it.